And good morning, we're back, and it's COMP1002, Web and Internet Fundamentals, Week 5, Lesson 5, Part 1. I want to do a little bit of admin stuff today, this morning, admin talk. When I mean that, I say I want to make a few, some minor changes to the schedule. I want to kind of notify you guys. I'm changing a couple things out. So let's go back. So again, we've kind of done assignment 1 and 2, and I noticed from the majority of you have already handed assignment 2 in. There were some questions around deployment and how to deploy stuff. I will give you another chance to redeploy if you have a problem after today's session. So if you had a problem deploying to the web server somewhere, we'll talk about it again, and we'll get them. We'll get it done. Let's say when you, before, let's say next assignment is due. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Give you some more time to do that. So normally what we say is, if you look at the lessons, we've done text, which is chapter 4. Last week we did forms, which is chapter 16, and today we're supposed to be doing images, chapter 5, right? And then links next week, chapter 6. I'm going to accelerate this a little bit, only because I think links is such a small section compared to what we found in images. So we'll talk about that today. I may give you a lab today. I'll see at the break how we're flowing, and if I can, I will. Images and links together, and then so we have a spare section here in next week, which is chapter 6 or which would have been chapter 6 in the book. But what I'm probably going to do is start talking about CSS early, right? So before the break. So again, next week we're supposed to talk about links, but I'm going to probably build in some CSS. So why am I doing that? Why am I accelerating things? Because I think it drives me crazy to watch you guys struggle with like a page with no styling. It makes me nuts, right? So this will be the last week we do that. Then next week we'll get right into styling, and then I'm probably going to break out. I'm going to keep the schedule, like so where it says chapter 7s and 8s, in week 8. I'm going to break it out a little bit and kind of impose CSS building blocks part 1, let's say next week, or it would be next week. And then part 2 will be after the break, right? So that way we kind of handle, well, I'll split it up a little bit and focus more on CSS in the beginning. And the reason for that is because there really is so much to go through and understand with CSS. I don't think 1 week will do it justice. That's just my take. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to make this change now, so you can see it being done. What I've really done is kind of copied this stuff into here, right? And I'm going to make it so it's chapters 5 and 6 today. I've already got the PowerPoints up online for those chapters. We'll talk about them. And then the week after, so next week, see if I can do this change as we speak. I'm going to kind of do chapter 7, right? I'll probably handle one chapter at a time. And then chapter 8 will be when we come back from break. And then we'll have a little bit of we'll have an exam or a test, if you will, on week 7, so not next week, but the week after, right? And what we're going to probably do is there's going to be a bit of multiple choice, true, false, in the first part of the exam, and then there'll be a bit of a practical piece for you to build something. You're probably going to get a framework of stuff. It's not like I'm not going to start you off with from scratch, only from a time frame perspective. There might not be time for me to say, build this from scratch, and then all of a sudden, you have a couple hours to build something else. So it'll be we'll use the full period, the full time we're together for the exam tests. Both practical and quote unquote written. Of course, as you know already, I don't do any physical written exam. I don't believe in any kind of paper exam. So part of it will be the actual theoretical piece will be online. And then the practical piece you'll hand in, you'll upload to a live site. Yeah.
We'll be able to use our books for user tests.
You will have every access to every tool you can possibly think of on Earth. All right, how about that? I don't limit you. And then because the reality is we don't get limited. In the real world, you have access to everything, right? So I'm going to give you the same access. It's not going to help you if you don't know what you're doing, right? It just because what's happened is you'll have a time crunch. So if you know your tools and you know what you're doing, you're going to do fine. If you haven't done your stuff and you're slow, right, because you've been working with other people or some people have helped you, then you're gonna have challenges, and that's how all my exams are, right? It's not because I don't limit you. Even when we do programming, if you and I ever do programming together, I don't say you can't look at your book and all that. Go ahead, look at your book, but it's gonna slow you down, right? You might get a few good answers, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be, you know, compared to what you have to do, it's gonna slow you down. Chances are the way I do it, and if you notice the breakdown, just from an admin perspective, is each test is worth 12.5%, but I've already, you know, kind of subtracted from this piece because we did our little quiz, right? So that's 5% gone for the quiz. So there's a bit of, you know, some extra marks I've removed from there. So it's going to be probably worth less. And I'm probably going to do a bit of it. A smaller piece will be for the true, false, multiple choice, probably 5%. And then if there's an extra, the other extra, whatever I have extra left over, and I'll have to figure out what your exam will be out of, will be for the practical piece. So the greater piece will be for the practical, because practical makes more sense in this case than just true, false, multiple choice. In terms of volume for true, false, multiple choice, expect the same, about 30 questions. So you're gonna have that first piece, 30 questions, something like that, and then you'll get right into your practical side of things. It'll be a bit of both. All right, so that's it for this first half. Next week, I'm gonna be doing mad marking, because at the other college that I work at, they have actually reading week next week during Thanksgiving week, basically, right? So it's a good opportunity for me to catch up with everything I need to do. So you should have the majority of your marks in by next week. So when we see each other, you'll know where you stand, and we can go over some, kind of the feedback if you have any questions. So if you look at this, how it works out for next half of the semester. Again, I may move up this assignment due date from week 11, which is where it says where it's slotted to be due. I may move this up to probably week 10 and give you a couple of weeks from week 10 to week 13 to do your final project, which I'm not sure. I think you can work with somebody else on. I think you and somebody else can work on this thing together, right? And then finally, you'll get your test 2. And again, probably around, I'm just, projecting, but my guess is probably somewhere around week 10 or 11, I'm also going to give you another quiz, right? So that way you'll have another chance to get some, quick poll about how you're doing, right, and understanding. And the reason why is because you're going to get a bunch of information on format. This part of that we're going to be testing you on is all going to be on CSS, which I think still is the #1 problem for most web developer designers, right? CSS for most people sucks. They're like, sucks, I hate CSS, right? Because it's hard. It's not like HTML. HTML is very straightforward. You mark up your page, you decide on the structure of your page. CSS, it takes a little bit of thinking. It gets you to there's a little bit of understanding about what to do, what not to do, and because most of us aren't designers, when you look at it, or you don't have, most of us don't have experience with print, right? Then there's issues. People who have experience with print, you'll be fine. You'll love it. Actually, that's where it came from. CSS all came from the print world before, right? How to do margins and padding and all that kind of stuff, typography. All that comes from the print world, so you're going to be fine. But for the most part, for most of us, when you look at CSS, you're like, I don't get it, right? So that's why I'm focusing on it a little bit more and spreading it out a little bit, because I think it needs a little bit more attention. Any questions or concerns around some of the changes I'm proposing for the outline? I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, so that way there's no confusion. Again, I will try and remind you, in terms of, so we had, as an example, we also had, just to mark this down so for you guys to remember, quiz 1 around there. And again, my projection, if you notice, within 4 weeks, so like the 4th week, so 1, 2, 3, and then 4 weeks we had that. I'm probably going to do the same thing, so like 1, 2, 3, and then by the time we get back in lists, when we do chapter 15, I'm probably going to have quiz 2. All right, that's where I'm scheduling, and I'm probably going to move this due date, like I said, from here to here, just because I want to give you more time for your final project, and give you some more feedback mid-semester, mid-second half of the semester.
You're reposting this onto Blackboard?
Yes, I'm gonna have to update this thing on Blackboard. I'm just putting it up so you guys can see it. So you have an opportunity to digest some of the changes. All right, I'm gonna just save this thing and throw it down. Let's talk about a couple of other things. Some of you have given me feedback in terms of the ability for you to kind of publish online. There's some people who have issues with Azure. Who has issues with Azure? You guys should all have access by now. Anybody? Who does not have access to Azure? Put your hand up, right? Okay, so we're gonna have to deal with that. I wanna make sure that everyone has access. This is the way we're gonna be using Azure, Microsoft Azure from a deployment perspective. You could use other services like DigitalOcean, Heroku. There's other free cloud services that you could use. You could also use GitHub Pages for now, like we talked about that as an opportunity as well. But we need to hammer this out because over every single assignment you're gonna get, right, is gonna be, you're gonna go live, right? Why am I pushing for this live stuff? Well, because the Georgian server doesn't work. That's the reason why. It's gone. It doesn't work properly. You might have issues with if there's anything that exists now, it may not work the way you think. So I need to push you guys to get experience. One of the number one thing that employers look for is not the fact that you know HTML. That's like, it's kind of rudimentary. It's that you can publish. It's like you can, if I go right to, I can publish on a website. I know how to point my domain to the website. The one problem we have, because the student pack that's included with Dreamspark, I'm just gonna go back up there for a second. And if I go to the student pack that I'm talking about, and again, the way to sign up for both services, and I kind of spoke about this briefly before, is you go to dreamspark.com/student/software-catalog.aspx. You got to put this whole address in. All right, so I'll let you guys go there if you haven't had a chance to go here already. It's not the same one as this one. So if you go to the Georgian College Microsoft Dreamspark one, this one that you normally see, it's not this one. Okay, if you guys saw this one and thought this is the way you get your Azure account, no, this is not the way you do it. This is just downloading software. If you want to download Windows 10, you go here, right? If you want to download Visual Studio 2015, this is where you go. If you want to get Azure access, no. You have to go to this one, which is dreamspark.com/student-software-catalog. And so if you look down, there's a couple of options, right? One of them is this one, which is GitHub Student Developer Pack, which I recommend. Who's done this? Who's done the GitHub Student Developer Pack? You should all be doing this. This is like, it's good for all of you to do. Why? I talked about this before, right? If you go here, you get your own domain name from Namecheap, right? Which is free for a year. I think it's worth $10. With SSL, secure socket layer. So a certificate that you can use for your site. You get a bunch of free private repos that you can use with GitHub, right? So that, I think this is important. So I think this is one thing you should probably get, for you to do your stuff on the web. And it'll last you through the time you're here at Georgia, right? This is a good thing, right? So you get this developer pack, and then you have some free repositories, private repositories. You can store your stuff, or you can use it to collaborate with others. And I know some people want to use private repositories instead of public ones because they don't want to share their code with anybody or any sensitive information. So that's one. The other one is this one, Microsoft Azure for Dreamspark. And if you click there, you're going to see this verification steps you need to take. So you verify yourself first, and once you register, verify yourself, you register. When you register, you get access to Microsoft Azure, which includes things like creating websites, deploying from GitHub. The only thing you can't do with Azure is combine it, for whatever reason, with your Namecheap, right, domain. So if you were going to point Namecheap at Microsoft Azure, it's going to say, meh, sorry, you don't have, your student account doesn't allow you to use a custom domain, right? But you can get around that by having two subscriptions, one for the free one for Azure for students, right? And the other one you can put in as a pay-as-you-go. So if you have a credit card, as an example, you can actually you can subscribe to Azure with your credit card. And when I say pay-as-you-go, a lot of the services for Microsoft Azure are free, like to start off and stuff, right? So even though they take your credit card, they don't actually charge you anything unless you actually use the services. Now be careful, things like VMs, virtual machines, if you actually create one and you run your credit card with one of those, yeah, it'll eat your credit card, right? Like it's heavy duty, because VMs is where you'll get charged a lot of money when you use those. But if you just make a simple website with no database, which you wouldn't need right now, you'll be fine. There's no issues with that at all. So I think Azure is a great thing to do. And then if you get your pay-as-you-go, you can actually point your account to a pay-as-you-go and then point your domain there, and no problem. So that's an option. Other deployment options, which I'm probably going to talk about at some point, are things like Heroku. Heroku is another kind of cloud provider. Actually, let me go there so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to use incognito mode to get there. So let's go incognito for a second and go to Heroku so you see it doesn't remember me. It looks like this. This is where you sign up. So you go and sign up for free, basically. And what Heroku does is they give you access to, you can deploy and create apps, web apps, just like you would normally do with Azure. You can deploy from GitHub. So you kind of pop your stuff up on GitHub, and then from there you can deploy to Heroku or to Azure, wherever you like, or multiple places as you like. So this is another really cool site that you can use, mostly for free if you do some basic sites. If you can also ramp this up and scale this service up so you have to pay. But for what we're doing here in class, this will be just fine. A service like this that'll allow you to deploy live. So Heroku is definitely another option. What about tooling? And that's one question that people have asked me for before as well. They said, hey Tom, you know what, I see you doing what you're doing. I don't have a Mac, you have a Mac, and I want to kind of do the same stuff as you do. Or I want to have, I can't somehow download the same programs or whatever, or whatever. I would like to have one environment where I can do everything. What is another option? And there is an option for that. If you're someone who wants to be a little bit more modern and not use something that's local, you don't want to corrupt your machine. Let's say you have your Mac or Windows machine, and you say, I don't want to download all these programs. I'm only going to take, 1 or 2 web courses, for whatever it is. And I don't want to install all this extra stuff. What do? You can certainly sign up for Cloud9, which is a free for the first part. There's it gives you a cloud development opportunity, right? So you can actually develop on the cloud instead of using brackets or anything like that. It actually gives you the ability to code on the cloud and deploy live from the cloud to Heroku and or Azure. It also gives you a bit of a command line, so to give you a taste of what it looks like and feels like. So I've of course subscribed to it long ago. Let's take a look and see that. So if I go to c9.io, just to give you an idea, you get a couple of workspaces. And let's say if I was to go, this one I kind of made yesterday just to show my colleague here. If I go to this one, right? So if I go to this workspace, it looks like an editor, right? So if you notice on the left-hand side, you're going to see a list of files, and you also get a bit of a command line space where you can do some command line work, because this is Ubuntu Linux that's built in. It's a little VM that you can use free, right up online, and you can do your coding up here. So if I was to actually go in, let's say if I was going to look at a page, right, here's my little web page and stuff. I can actually do all my coding here, and then eventually deploy right to GitHub. Right, so it's a whole integrated environment right online, right, for you for free, right? So again, if you only have 2 workspaces, and they give you some limitations in terms of the stuff you get. If you wanted to go more professional, you can certainly ramp this one up and start paying, and it's a good, worthwhile service if you want to keep a consistent environment, especially if you don't have your laptop or don't have access to one. Kind of if you're traveling around and you still want to work on your stuff, this is a really good option. So again, just trying to give you, just introducing some of these things is what I wanted to do today. I'm not going to go into detail with Cloud9 because that's kind of an advanced thing, but if you look into it, I wanted to just introduce it to you as an option. The most common one, I'll be honest still, for students that they use for deployment, which is nice and easy because it's right on GitHub, is GitHub Pages. And I think I mentioned that before, GitHub Pages. If you go to GitHub Pages, it's free for you to use GitHub Pages. You can even point to it with your custom domain. Right, so if you get a domain from Namecheap, you can certainly create a repository. It's step-by-step on how to do that if you look up GitHub Pages. And then from there, what it's going to be doing is it's going to ask you some questions. And if you do the step-by-step, if you actually, kind of slip down here, it does kind of this lazy loading thing where it actually shows you how to do everything, right? From either whether it's from command line or whether it's from, the tool or whatever, and then finally you're ready to go. It even gives you instructions on how to point your custom domain at GitHub pages. If I go if I search this up, point domain to GitHub page. There we go. There's a little bit of a tutorial on GitHub on how to do that. So how to set up your domain provider, create a CNAME, and so on, and how to point your custom domain. So let's say you made a domain called mydomain.xyz or whatever it's going to be called. You can point that custom domain, that professional domain, to your GitHub pages, and then it's going to, instead of accessing it at whatever your account name is .github.io, you can use my custom domain.xyz or whatever it's going to be to point to your custom page. So this is another really good option, and because you're already on GitHub, as an example, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? I mean, if you produce things on GitHub and if you use GitHub as a repository where you populate everything, this is a really good example of what you can do. So any questions around just your choices? Again, I highly recommend Azure. If you haven't signed up for Azure, please sign up today. I think it's probably the better of the choices. It's very easy for the actual platform itself, and we're going to talk about some of this stuff as we do lesson 5 today. I'm going to deploy to GitHub, so I'm going to kind of use GitHub as a repository, and right from GitHub again, I'm going to show you how to deploy right to Azure, right, directly. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a continuous deployment where Azure watches. It's going to actually watch all my changes in GitHub, and it'll automatically redeploy it to the web. Okay, so it's kind of a really quick and easy, almost like so easy way, such an easy way of doing it and deploying your website. So if you need to fix anything, if you want to resubmit your assignment number 2, because I asked you guys to be live for assignment number 2, then you can certainly do that. I will allow that, right? So that way you can, or at least give me the link instead of resubmitting. Just resubmit the link. Say, this is Tom. This is the link to my website. It wasn't working before, and here's my live link now. Okay, so if you can do that before next week. So how do we do this Azure stuff anyway, right? So let's first start off with the basic stuff. So I want you to follow me here while we do this. I'm going to kind of put together another little folder on my desktop. It's getting crowded now. Usually I don't do this, but for you guys, it's okay. So I'm going to get a new folder. And again, you can create this on your desktop, Windows or Mac, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to rename this folder so it's lesson 5. And I'm going to say COMP1002 lesson 5. I'll do it the other way around this time. Okay, so I got my lesson 5 folder. Let's build out the things that I want today. I'm going to be talking about images and links, and we're going to also talk about some image editing stuff today, right? How do I do image editing, and what recommendations do I have if you're going to do some simple image editing? Who's a Photoshop aficionado here? Who's the guy that's like awesome with Photoshop? Is there anybody? I got one, right? If you're not awesome with Photoshop, and again, most of us aren't, there are some tricks and tips that I'm going to recommend for you. Photoshop also is an Adobe product, right? And it's not free. For students, you guys get a discount if you were to get Adobe CC products. But we're going to talk about some free resources out there that can help you out, and also which product, if you were going to choose Adobe, which one would you use? There's some choices. There's Photoshop, there's Illustrator. You can still do stuff with Illustrator too. And there's also the old Fireworks, right, which is still around. Even though they're moving to Adobe CC, or they've moved to Adobe CC, Fireworks CS6 is still a viable product that you can still use for now. They're still supporting it, and it's a much smaller build than Photoshop, and it does a lot of the stuff we want to do. So even though your PowerPoints will say Photoshop, you do this, I'm going to be talking about Fireworks because it's a little bit easier. But the stuff on the books is Photoshop. You can certainly follow that, or you can use other programs. So we know this is our folder structure. So I'm going to kind of go a new folder. I'm going to call it content. This is where we're going to call our future CSS. So where we're going to put everything. I'm also going to do another folder called assets with capital A. And, you know, kind of those are the two. And one that we probably won't touch until the end of the class, scripts, which is or the end of the course where I put my JavaScript and other scripts in there as well, right? In my assets, typically what I want to do, I want to create another folder in my assets folder. So if I just double click here and go new folder, in my assets folder, I want to make it so that it's images with lowercase I. And in there may be another folder with fonts if I have some custom fonts I want to use. And maybe another folder with audio if I have some kind of audio or video or something else that I want to kind of put in. Multimedia might be another choice. All I'm doing is creating my folder structure. And again, I'm showing you this over and over and over again. Maybe you'll get sick of me doing this because this is important. Structuring your files. And it doesn't matter whether you're programming games, right? Or building websites or doing enterprise level applications. The first thing we do is structure create our file structure so that we're organized. Because if we're not organized, we're going to run into problems potentially. Okay, so that's one. Content we're not going to change. Scripts I'm not going to change for now. I do want to create a index.html file, and we're going to do that in brackets. So again, brackets is again the editor that I'm using. You can use whatever editor you like. You can just use Notepad, Notepad++, text edit, whatever you want to use. Text Wrangler if you're a Mac user. It doesn't matter as long as you're able to put things together, or you can go really crazy heavy duty and use Visual Studio or Dreamweaver or something like that. All right, so here's my folder, and now I'm going to bring up brackets. So let's do that really quickly. And I have it somewhere. Here it is. Here's brackets. Just going to make this screen a little bit smaller so we can talk about this. And again, I was doing some work with Node.js. That's what you're seeing here. This is that thing. And I'm going to just drag my folder into the side here where it says working files. And what it does is it changes what I'm looking at, what brackets is pointing to my new folder. That's what it's doing here. Okay, so I'm going to add a new file. So I'm going to kind of click new file. I'll make it index.html. We'll make one today for now. And we're going to add in some basic styling here and stuff in a second in here in brackets, right? And not because I don't want to do this again, but I'm going to go fast when I set up my page for a second. And then I'm going to upload to GitHub, and you can always copy what I'm going to do for this one, but this should all be familiar to what I'm going to do. So again, I'm going to put a doc type. Doc type is number one, HTML on the top. Right? You're going to have an HTML tag, right? If you can stay with me, that's great. Where language is equal to English, right? That's important. Inside the HTML tag, there's two more tags. There's the head tag. And then underneath the head tag, there's going to be the body tag, right? Here's the body tag. In the head tag, I'm going to have a meta tag, the first meta tag we use, which is character set is equal to UTF-8. This is important to put in from a character set perspective, from compatibility, and tell our browser how to react. Remember, the head controls how our browser sees things in some ways. And then I'm also going to put this name is equal to viewport meta tag, and content is equal to width is equal to device width. Initial scale 1. You may not remember all this stuff, but I'm just hoping, well, just by osmosis, you'll see it enough times that you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that one. And then title, your title tag with some kind of title. For example, COMP1002 lesson 5 is kind of a viable title for us today. I'm going to add in a CSS file, so I'm going to click on my content here, and I'll add a new file in my content called main.css. And I've called it main, I've called it app.css before. And right now there is no CSS. We're just going to make this, kind of a, main CSS for our website. That's our style sheet for our website. That's all it's going to do. It's going to be a comment. That's how you do comments in CSS. Same way you would do comments in other coding languages. If I do the double slash, right, as an example, I comment, if I comment it out. But typically, if I want to do multi-line comments with CSS, you use the / and then */, right, to do a comment with CSS. That's the first thing you've learned about CSS, right? So I want to attach my CSS page now into my page, and I'm going to do that with a link, right? So I'm going to say link, and then I'm going to say rel is equal to style sheet, and I'm going to say href for the actual link itself, and I'm going to point to my content folder. I'm going to point to my main.css, and then I'm going to just close off this tag. So I've kind of linked to my main CSS. That's what I've done here with this tag. All right, so if I look at the my index.html, the head of my document is pretty much ready to go. I'm also going to put some stuff in the body, and we're going to make the example today, which is again, I'm going to make a wrapper. So I'm going to say a div tag with a class of container, and inside my container class, I'm going to have a nav, and but my nav is going to be inside of a header. You've seen this all before, guys and girls. So my header, inside my header, I've got a nav. Inside my nav, I've got a UL, an unordered list. Inside my unordered list, I have 5 list items. I like times 5. Inside my list items, I have an anchor tag. Inside my anchor tag, I have a couple of things. One of them is an href tag with, we're just going to make it a placeholder of pound. We're going to talk about links today, so this will make more sense to you. That's one. And also, if I use curly braces, I can use content for my value, and I can put in there the value for my page, which would be, or the actual link content, which would be link. So this is link text, link number, right? And then if I put the $, it tells Emmett tells the the system that when I press tag here or tab that it'll number all my links. I have 5 links. It'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what the $sign does. It's almost like a placeholder for my links. And if I press tab, it'll produce those the links, right? Stuff you've seen before. And again, if you want to put in the ARIA tags, we can put in role. If I go navigation, that's what the navigation is for my header, right? If I say role, right? If I kind of look at the top. So what's my best thing for thing? Probably banner, right? Be for the top of my navigation there, and my header, right? I'm also sometimes what I put into alongside the navigation, I might have a nav, and then next to my nav, I might have some kind of logo, which is something we haven't really covered before. And typically what I'd like to do is put everything in order. So if I want my nav to be on the right side and my logo to be on the left side, which we're going to talk about today, how to put a logo in, I'm going to give a space for a logo. So I'm going to kind of create some kind of div tag, which is a generic tag I'm going to use right now, and I'm going to kind of give it a class of logo or brand. Let's talk about brand. This is my brand, right? And inside my div tag, I'm probably going to have some kind of content. I'm going to put a marker in here, some kind of I want to put a comment, and HTML comments, again, I'm going to do one of these for comments, right? That's the start of my comment tag, and then I'm going to put in, we're going to place our logo here. We're going to talk about that later on, right? So that's kind of a placeholder for our logo. Might as well start doing some of this too. This is the header of my document, so I'll do that. So again, I'm doing the stuff you've seen before. Header, right? And then further down, what I'm going to get into is my main. So I'm going to say, here's my main content. Main content. And inside my main content, there's some other options I have that I could use. Like for example, I can definitely use a main tag, right? So let's do that. So I'll say main. And again, sometimes what I want to is to put a role, right, of, I say content. Content info is here. I could do that, or I could put a role of main, which is probably a much better role, right? And then, of course, I've got my role, but I want some kind of class, and maybe I want to kind of put a class in here of main content, because this I want to target. I want to be able to target this thing. You'll see we've been doing these classes and IDs over the last course of days when we've been together. And I'm trying to get you ready for CSS. That's why I keep putting classes in there. We haven't done anything with them right now, but we're going to use classes as hooks, right? We're going to use them as hooks to kind of target our CSS or our sections of our page and target them with styles. That's what CSS is. We're going to format the page with our hooks. So I've got main, and then inside our main, I'm going to have some kind of article or section. So let's just call it our first article. So here's our article, and then maybe some kind of a class of, maybe I'll even call it article. And then inside there, I'm going to have some kind of header information. So I'll have a, an H1 tag with, maybe the topic for today, which is going to be images and links. Images and links. And maybe I'll put in. Now, why is it giving me a problem with the and? Anybody remember or anybody know? I'm putting and, the ampersand in there, right? What does this mean for CSS? Sometimes it gives me this red mark because it's saying usually and or ampersand precedes some kind of code like and copy, right? So it doesn't know what to do. So sometimes we want to use kind of an escape code. I think it's a backslash. I can't remember what it is now. But or just use the word and. Sometimes you're going to be having problems. Sometimes you want to use an ampersand. So we're going to talk about how do I use an escape character to put an ampersand or special symbols in my CSS. We've kind of talked about that before, but I'll say it again. So here's the next one is a paragraph tag, and inside my paragraph tag, I'm going to have about, let's say, 50 characters of stuff, right? 50 words. That's what Lorem 50 does, right? I got my main content. I got my article. Maybe in the bottom here, I'll do my footer. So I'll say here's my footer, and I'll kind of annotate this with a remark, right? A comment that says footer. So I've got my page kind of blocked out, and then at the bottom, I may have some kind of div tag with another a generic tag that I'm going to use. Inside my generic tag, I'm also going to put some kind of an H1 tag or H4 tag. Let's do that. So I'll do an H4 tag with some kind of copyright information. So I'll say and copy, and with copyright 2015, and maybe something like, all rights reserved. Some kind of, thing, copyright, mycompany.com, kind of thing, right? So there's the basic page structure we're going to work with today. It's not like anything you haven't seen before. I think we've talked about all this before, right? Where we've seen this kind of content over and over again. I also want to give, I have 5 links here, because we're creating a fake nav again. We've been doing this again and again. I remember what we keep on doing in the list item itself, I keep on putting this class of active, right, to kind of specify that link is active. And then I start renaming stuff. So I rename my link. Instead of link number 1, as an example, I go home, which I might as well repoint to index.html here as we go. All right, so this is all review from what we've already done. I'm just showing it to you again, just so that way you see it. Obviously, it's product services. I'm going to do a 5-page site, so products, services. I'm going to keep these kind of blank for now. And contact us. I may get into that a little later if we have time. One thing I've done with you guys, I've jumped ahead a bunch of times with the links, how to make a link and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about that again in more detail today for the first time. But we've talked about links, we've talked about unordered lists, list items, and so on. And we've seen this page structure over and over again. And that's part of learning, right? When I want to be a good writer, right, I want to read. If the best way to be a good writer first is to read, and absorb all the stuff you like to read. If you want to be a fantasy writer, right, because you love Dungeons and Dragons, right? I love Dungeons and Dragons, right? I want to be a fantasy writer, and the best way to do that is to read fantasy, right? If you want to be a web developer, then you start looking at this stuff. You look at code over and over again to get an understanding of what you're looking at, so you absorb it. You absorb the flow and the structure, so that way when you see it, it's not foreign to you. Remember, for the most part, when regular citizens, people who don't know anything about the web, they look at it and they do some kind of, they see, a web page, it looks like gobbledygook to them, like spaghetti. They're like, what is all that? Oh my God, I broke my page, right? No, you didn't break your page. It's just, what the page looks like from a structure perspective in the background, right? So I'm going to save this page. Again, there's nothing new here. Okay, you can lay out your page very similar to this in a very short way. I've done this very quickly, of course, but only because just to show you guys, I missed an ARIA role. Hold on, best practices tell me I should put an ARIA role in here. of content info. Just so that way you guys have an idea of how to do stuff over and over again. Okay, so I've got my page. Let's minimize this for a second, and I'm going to go into my my terminal view. Okay, and normally I do my GitHub here from the terminal. And I said, guys, you don't have to worry about this. You can do GitHub from here. But there are tools, and I'll do it the other way around today. So let's do it the other way around. I'm gonna. You can download a GitHub tool if you're interested. So I'm gonna go to GitHub. And if I go to desktop.github.com, you can download this little tool from GitHub. It's GitHub for desktop, right? It's good for both Mac and Windows, right? Unfortunately, for Linux users, this isn't going to work if you're a Linux user. But what it does is it keeps track of your commits. So these little dots here are each commit that you make, a snapshot of what your project is going to look like. And it does so in a graphical way, so you never have to look at the command line. All right, if you're not a command line person, I know some people said like, oh my God, you know, I can't believe all this work I have to do on the command line to upload to GitHub. Yeah, you're right, it's a lot of work, right? But this tool will avoid some of that, right? So if you download the desktop tool from GitHub, and I'll show you what it looks like now. So if you want to take a moment to do that, go to desktop.github.com and download the tool, right? Now again, you need an account. You need a GitHub account in order for this to work properly. So if you haven't got a GitHub account yet and you haven't signed up, or you haven't had you didn't get your student pack, right, as an example, then you probably want to do that before you do what I'm going to do, right? But I think it's a good practice to keep track of your files from a version control, source control, if you will, perspective. It's good, or best practices as a developer, you should have this workflow where every time you do some kind of web page or an application, whether you're working for Anju and you're learning, in the future you're going to learn, in COMP1004, and you're doing rapid application development, probably next semester, if I'm not wrong, right? Or whether you're learning Java fundamentals or programming fundamentals with Jarrett, right? Then you're probably going to want to keep track of your stuff on GitHub, right? So that way, if you have a problem, like I said before, the dog ate my homework, my laptop blew up, right? I don't know what broke my build. Everything was working fine, and now I don't know what happened. I made a change, and it's gone, right? These kind of things you can avoid by using proper or best practices and using version control. So GitHub is only one provider. There's others. There's Visual Studio Online, which is like a GitHub for Visual Studio. There is Bitbucket. There's SVN, and so on, Subversion. There's all kinds of other ones out there, Perforce, and so on, that allow you to use a revision control or source control, to keep track of your work. This is, again, from a developer perspective, if you have me again, if you have Rich, if you have any of the other people, you're going to see this again. This is not the first and last time you're going to look at GitHub, right? It's part of our workflow. Okay, so we're going to download the tool. I downloaded it, and now let's launch it. So I'm going to go into my applications. And for Windows users, you're just going to go to launch your GitHub for desktop. So I'm going to go down, and if I look at GitHub desktop and double click, it brings up my user interface, right? So the first thing I want to do here, and again, I've got some other things I was working on, but let's suppose I want to add in my repository. Right now my repository, the one that's local, or the files that I have, my folder, COMP1002 lesson 5, is not a repository. It's just a folder, right? We need to make it into a repository, and I've been doing it online in the background in front of you, like in terminal. I go git init, git add dot to add everything, and so on. Those are the basic commands I've been kind of doing so you see it almost like as, to learn by osmosis. You see it, you see me do it over and over again, and then, okay, I can do that. And I've recorded it, so you can follow my steps and do it yourself. But let's do it this way for the first time. I assume you have an account on GitHub for this to work. If you don't have an account, not going to work for you. All right, so let's try this out. So how do I do this? I'm going to say plus, and then there's two things I can do. I can create, I can clone, or I can add, right? So if I create, right, it tells me what's my repository name, and I can give it a path, right? So right now I want to choose my path So it's pointing at my, on the desktop, I want to point to my COMP1002 lesson 5. So there it is. I'm going to press open, right? And I'm going to give it a repository name, which I'm probably going to give the same name as I've used. So I'm going to say COMP1002. It's my local path, actually. That's what this is doing. It's actually creating a, actually this will create a repository. I wonder if I can do it another way. Maybe I'll just give it an I'll add, and it'll say, well, there's no repository here. Do you want to create one? That's the way to do it. So I'm just pointing. If I click add instead of create will create a whole folder and stuff as well. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put add. And I'm going to choose my folder and click open. So now I have my path to my folder, COMP1002 lesson 5. And then it says create and add repository. So I'm going to click create and add repository, right? And if you notice, it says I've got 2 uncommitted changes, right? Because it shows me that what files I have in there. I have my main CSS and my index.html. It doesn't show me my other folders, even though I have a bunch of folders in here, right? Because there's nothing in them, right? GitHub won't allow you to use or to create folders, as an example, if there's nothing there. Like, it won't put them up on GitHub, as an example, right? All right, so I've got my stuff, and I want to, it's asked me for a comment. If you notice down here, it says, hey, give me a summary of your changes. There's 2 uncommitted changes up here. And by the way, your Windows version might look slightly different. It might have an underline instead of what it says here. So it says 2 uncommitted changes. And if you notice on the right here, there's this blue circle, right? That's kind of broken up. That's showing me that I haven't really committed my my changes to the master branch. Okay, don't worry about what that means yet. So I'm going to make a summary that I'm going to say initial commit. Right, so I'm going to type in initial commit on my first commit. That might be the proper way to do it. You can certainly add a description here of what your commit is. And then I want to commit and sync master, right? Commit and sync master. So I'm going to say commit and sync, right? But it says, hold on, here's my COMP1002 lesson 5. Here's my account it's pointing to. My GitHub account is Tsiliopoulos, right? It tells me what kind of repository I want to make, right? I'm going to name this repository COMP1002 lesson 5, right? As an example. I could also choose other ones, right? So right now it's going to push to my own personal one. I want to push it to Georgian here, right? So that's where it's going to go. I could definitely include other people in my team, right? Because I've created the Georgian organization, Georgian College, right? But now I'm just going to click Publish Repository. Now these steps might be slightly different for you. But if I click Publish Repository, it's going to go online because I've given GitHub access. And now my dot is a solid dot, solid blue dot, right? Okay, so let's see what this has done. What has this done? So how do I check this? I'm going to go to GitHub. I'm going to go to my GitHub pages. So I'm going to say github.com. And I'm going to go to my Georgian organization I created. I called it Georgian College. Yours is going to be your own. And if you notice on the left here, I've got this repo, COMP1002 lesson 5, that I didn't create. I created it for me, right? And there's my content. I got my main CSS. And over here, I have my index.html, which I just made. So if you want to find the stuff I just did, because I went too fast for you, go to github.com/Georgian College /COMP1002-lesson 5. And you'll see this content. So if I go to Georgian College, you'll see COMP1002 lesson 5. So that's it in a nutshell. I've kind of deployed to GitHub, right? I've got my little site on GitHub right now, but it's not a viable site. It hasn't gone anywhere, and I haven't even tested it yet. But I've got my first commit, the first snapshot of my files. I've saved them here up on GitHub, so that way, worst case scenario, if I mess up and if I delete my folder, I can always get those files back by downloading. I can click download, zip, or clone in desktop, and I can get my files back instead of losing them. Here's something. What if I add a README file online? I can do that. If it's not local, it'll be online first. Now what's happened is someone's come along and working with somebody else, and they're going to make a change to my files because I'm collaborating with another user, right? And I gotta connect with them. I gotta work with them. And the problem sometimes is if I work on one section and they work on another section, we may not be on the same page in terms of our development. So let's add that. So I'm going to add a README file. And the README file also gives me instructions about how to use my repository sometimes if I have a special piece of code or whatever. And it's a markdown file. If you notice this pound symbol here in the readme.md file, that's what it is, right? It actually is like an H1 tag. That's what it's like, but it's a markdown. It's just using a different way of marking up our file, similar to what we do with HTML, right? So I'm going to kind of make a comment here that says this repo is for COMP1002 web and internet fundamentals at Georgian College. Okay, so got a little bit of a comment there. I'm going to click commit new file on the bottom of the green button. And when I do that, it gives me the README file. Now I'm behind. I've got 2 commits up on GitHub, right? If I click on my commits, you can see the order of my revisions. I'm just going to scale down here so you can see it a little easier. I've got 2 revisions I made. One initial commit where I only had my index.html and my main.css, and a second one now that I have this create README file. That's what I did, where I created a README file. However, locally I don't know about the commit that I have online. I have no idea. I'm not connected locally to what's happening on GitHub. I need to sync. So I can click this sync button, and what it does is it pulls down my README file right from GitHub, so it's local now. It's local to my files. So now I have my README file. If I actually go look at my physical file folder, right? So if I just minimize this stuff for a second and go to my file folder in my operating system, I do see a README file now because I've pulled it down from GitHub, right? So the order is like this. I'm working with somebody else, right? Let's say me and Keith working together on a project, right? And then Keith is doing the design because he's a way better designer than me, right? He's sleek, he's sexy, he's modern, right? He's going to pull in some new stuff, and his work is awesome, right? So he's going to pull in some really good design. I'm a good developer. I'm a hacker. I'll hack the crap out of the code and put things together to work, right? And we're going to make a good team, this little indie developer team, and we'll put together this awesome website. So he works on the design. I work on the code, and sometimes his design work spills into my code, right? So he says, Tom, before you do any work, make sure you do a pull. So what do? I go up on GitHub, I pull down his work first. So now we're in sync, and then I do my work, and I push things back up. Keith now has for him, he's got to pull down my changes, right? And now he's up to date. Now he can do his changes. That is the most simplest workflow. Sometimes, however, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes, however, I make a change, he makes a change. We're looking at the same file, and what GitHub will allow us to do is merge the 2 changes together. For now, I'm not going to talk about that. I want to keep it simple. But so that's the workflow. If you work with somebody else and you intend to use GitHub, by the way, it's not a requirement in any of your assignments, right? But if you do choose to use GitHub for your final project because you're working with somebody else, the workflow is like this. I'm working, I do my changes. Now it's your turn. And, it's almost like I hand off, I hand the baton to the next person, and then he's able to work. And then when they're done, I pull his changes, and then I can work. That's the easiest way, and you don't get into trouble. All right, so I got this stuff going on, my README file and everything else. I got my GitHub, right? Here's my GitHub. How do I deploy to Azure, right? Now, again, I'm assuming that you have an Azure account to do this, right? So let's go into Azure, and I've got my little site. Let's just check it first of all. I'm just going to double-click my index.html file to see if it works. Yay, I got a very simple site. And this is what I should be seeing in Azure. Right now, this site right now is only local to me. I can only see it because this is my file system. But I want to share this beautiful, glorious site with you because it's so amazing, right? So I'm going to go up on Azure and do this, right? How do we do that? I got to go to Azure. So I'm going to go to, if I have an account, I'm going to go to manage windowsazure.com. Excuse me. I'm not in the right space. I've got another account that I use for Acrotech, my other company. So I'm going to log out of here. So I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to sign in. And of course, I've got no credits left for my free student account here on Azure, but don't worry about it. So you're going to see a bunch of disabled or whatever, because my credit status is probably finished for this month. Yeah, see this where it says storage account, and these little symbols here. You won't get this because where it says suspended, because my credit status, this is what happens when you outrun your credit, when you only get a bunch of money every month, right? And so my free Azure Pass it's done for this month. I've used all my credits. Look, I've got 2 more days, and then I get renewed. I get more money, right? But that's how it goes. So, but that's okay because I've got pay as you go. So I'm going to show you what it looks like with this one, this little account that I made. Okay. So I want to create an account, and I'm going to go to Web Apps, right? And I'm going to click plus. And if you notice, in my menu here in Web Apps, it's going to give me and there's different portals you're going to see. This is the old portal, and I'm going to show you the new portal after this. There's 2 ways to do this. So this is the old way to do it. And then I'm going to create it. I'm going to erase it. And I'm going to go to the new portal. I'm going to create it again, both ways. So I can do a quick create, and I'm going to create a URL. This URL is a subdomain of azurewebsites.net, right? Azurewebsites.net is the actual domain for Azure, right? So any subdomain I make has to be unique because it's going to be available everywhere in the world, right? So let's just call this COMP1002, right? And then we'll say lesson 5. And we'll put a dash in there too, just to make it even more complex. How about that? So this, if you notice, this green check mark means that it's available. The name is available. No one else has taken this name anywhere in the world, right? Obviously, they wouldn't COMP1002 lesson 5 as a website name. But so that's the one thing I do. I can choose my service plan. And right now, if you notice, I can't use my Azure Pass. So I got to use one of my other ones where I pay as you go. Again, you'll have access to it because for yourself, when you sign up for Azure, because you have a student pack, you'll get it for free, right? Okay, so there's COMP1002 lesson 5. And I want to press create web app. So what it does, right, if you notice down here, is it says creating, right? And what this thing will do is it'll create this free web app, right? This free web app until it's running. See, it says running right now, right? So this is the way to do this with the old portal, if you have access to the old portal. I'm going to click this next button, right? And down here where it says integrate source control, I'm going to click up a deployment source, which is GitHub. Here's my GitHub. I'm going to click next. And in there, I'm going to choose a repository, right, that I can have access to. And if I scroll down to where it says Georgian College, right, here's COMP1002 lesson 5, right? That's on GitHub. Now I'm going to click next, the little checkbox. What it's going to do is it's going to pull all the files right from GitHub and incorporate them into my website. It's going to take some time to do this. Here's my deployment target, right, until it's done. Okay, so this is my last. It also tells me my last commit. Here's my last commit, which is create readme.md. So it tells me what the last thing I did was to pull it down. Okay, if I go back into the websites now, so if I call this website up, so comp, you try this too, if you want to try this, comp1002, and I'll say lesson 5.azurewebsites.net, azurewebsites.net. If I do this, right, comp1002, if I've done it properly, you're going to get this. Now my beautiful site, how beautiful it is available everywhere in the world, right? Go check it out. comp1002-lesson5.azurewebsites.net. That's how easy it was. Now, you might say to yourself, what? That was easy? Yeah, it's easier, much easier than using FTP. And the reason why is because, so notice that I have home, product, services, about us, and contact us, right? But I want to make a change. You know what? Let's say what I want to do is I want to say images and links. I don't want to make that my H1 tag. I want to make that my H2 tag. Today's lesson is called lesson 5, right? COMP1002 lesson 5. That's what it should be here, right? Not this images and links. So what do? Well, I'm going to go back into my brackets, start here, and I make a change to my stuff. So I say, well, instead of saying images and links, let's make this an H2 tag. Right, so I'm just going to rename this an H2 tag, and I'll have an H1 tag above that. Right, so here's my H1 tag. But I'm going to put in COMP1002 lesson 5, right? All right, so that's what I've done. I've made a change, right? Now, because I'm using GitHub for desktop, or desktop for GitHub, here it is, right? You see that I have one uncommitted change here, because the desktop tool for GitHub watches my folders. And actually, there's a watch function, so it's watching my folders, see any changes that I make. So here I am. I need to, if you notice, it kind of puts in red what I've changed, right? So I've removed the negative, the minus sign, and in red tells me the things I've removed. The pluses are things I've added. So I've made a change to my file. That's what it does. And then I give a summary of my changes. So I can say something like this: updated index.html. And then commit and sync master. When I do that, right, it creates another little dot here, right? So here's these if you notice, these are these gray dots. What this is showing now is that I have 3 commits locally and 3 commits that I've synced remotely, right? Well, guess what? I just synced to GitHub, and just like my desktop tool is watching my file folders in my operating system, right? Azure is watching GitHub for changes, right? My repository. So here's my Azure. I'm not even going to GitHub anymore, right? I just have to refresh Azure, and if everything goes well, I got my changes instantly. So online, my website has been updated by a push to GitHub. That's the workflow. That's why I suggest you get into this workflow and use GitHub, right? I'm going to keep doing this over and over again for the remainder of this course with us together, right? So you're going to see it. It's not going to be foreign to you, so don't worry about it. So if you want to redeploy, I've got this video that I just did. If you follow my steps, or if you have to look online on Google to help yourself out to do it, it's not that difficult of a step or a process, right? And I did it through the GitHub desktop tool, right? If you want to do it through command line, you've seen me do it before a bunch of times via command line, right? But you don't have to do it through command line. You can certainly use the desktop tool. All right, now I made this website, but I made it through the old portal. By the way, if you notice, I've got 2 deployments, right? I've got my old deployment here, which is at this time in 901, and then a few minutes later in 903, right, I did the second deployment, right? And you can say every time I update to GitHub now, it'll redeploy or swap out my deployment, right, with my latest files. So my website will be always up to date. Now this is good, but why would this be bad? There's also a potential for it to be bad. Anybody? Why could this be a bad thing? Come on, guys. I know I'm asking you questions now. Oh my God, he's actually asking me questions, and I don't have to just watch, right? Okay, I'm gonna start calling upon Marissa. You're the girl with my favorite name because it's my daughter's name. Marissa, tell me why it could be a bad thing if I update to GitHub and Azure or whatever your service you're using is watching GitHub. Why could that be? It's a good thing because if I make a change, it happens automatically. Why is it a bad thing too? Why could it be? Any idea? No idea. Anyone else? Yes? If it breaks the code, it's going to be broken automatically. When I break my code, it's broken online, right? We don't normally do this, right, in terms of production. It's good for us as students and teachers, right, to do it together. You see your changes automatically. What you should do is test thoroughly your code locally, making sure it's good and it works, right? And when you're satisfied, what you do is you push it into a non-production staging site. And then what we do is we swap the staging site with our production site. So we have our GitHub has the latest version, working version, not a broken version. Okay, let's do it one more time so you've seen it in a different way with the new portal, because there's actually a new portal that Azure likes to use, right? So how do I kill this? First of all, I'm going to go back, right? And I've got my COMP1002 lesson 5, right? I still got my GitHub deployment, but I'm going to kill this thing altogether. I'm going to click on this thing and click delete, right? So here's my delete, right? I'm going to click this to go on as an example, and it's deleting this website now. So this website is gone. Let's do this through the new portal. And to get to the new portal for Azure, right, you do this. You say portal.azure.com, right? It looks a little different. It looks like this, right? And this is what you may have access. You might have this access. When you have your student pack, your student access to Azure may look like this, right? So I'm going to show you both ways, just in case you try this out and it doesn't work for you, right? Portal.azure.com. Okay, so I'm there, and I want to do a new app. I'm going to go to do new web app. Here's my new web app. And what I want to do here is click add. Right, so I'm going to click add. And here's my web app name. Let's call it the same as I did just now. So I'm going to say COMP COMP1002, and we'll say lesson 5, right? Because it's not anywhere. I already deleted it. I'm going to use pay as you go because that's what's available to me right now. You would use your Azure Student Pass or Azure Dreamspark, right? That's what you'd use. That's what your subscription would be. I have access to the other one normally, but my Azure subscription pass is over for this month. I've killed it. And let's click create. Right. So what this does, whenever I click create or whatever, it creates a container for my web app, right? That's what it does. If I click on web apps again, while this is deploying, you notice there's a deploying thing here. If I click on web apps, and if I look down to my new web app, here it is, right? Now it's saying that it's pay as you go. Let's click on this thing. Okay, it's live right now. It's empty. If you wouldn't be able to go there and do anything with it right now. But what I want to do is I want to hit on the right here. There's something called continuous deployment. This is the other way to do it on the portal. So if I click the continuous deployment here, it's going to ask me to configure my settings for GitHub. This is how easy it is. So I'll click on GitHub, right? And I click GitHub as my provider. If you notice, you can choose a bunch of different providers. I can choose Visual Studio Online, my local Git repository. I can choose GitHub, Bitbucket, Dropbox, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm going to choose GitHub. And then what it's going to do is it says, okay, choose your organization. I want to choose Georgian, right? That's where we are. And I'm also going to choose which one in Georgian. I want to choose, obviously, COMP1002, lesson 5, which is right here. Now, it also gives me a choice of choosing different branches. I only have one branch right now, and I'm going to press OK. Once I press OK, if you notice these little dots that happen over here, it's working on it. It's actually taking the GitHub files and sending them over to the container that I have, that I've created for my website. Right, that's what it's doing, right? So it's going to keep doing that until it's done. You have to give it a second, right? And now, if you notice, it's spinning now. It's updated to my last update. It's going to build this out just like it did last time, right? After this, we'll take a short break, right? And once it does this, once it's done deploying to GitHub, we'll have the same effect. We'll be able to go to the website, and we'll be able to launch Azure, and it'll be the same. Now, sometimes, like I said, this takes a little long. It's going to take a bit of time to update, but it'll do the same thing as we did before. There it is. It's active, right? If I go back to my Azure website and if I click refresh to test it, I get my latest website, right? So those are the two steps. I've shown you how to do. I've shown you how to do it in both portals. So both the new portal and the old portal. Right, because Azure, this cloud service that I'm talking about by Microsoft, right? It exists in two different ways right now. You might see it like this, and that's why I've shown it to you this way. You might also sign up. If you sign up for pay-as-you-go for whatever reason, that might be something you do. You might see it the old way. So I want to show you how to deploy from GitHub in both ways, just so you can do that. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to make a little app. I want you guys to sign up. When we come back, if you haven't signed up already, right? There's a few steps you have to take. Right? Where I'm going to get you to do it, actually to, deploy to GitHub, and then from GitHub, I want you to auto-deploy into Azure, okay? Just like these same steps that I just took today, all right? So I'll put a little lab together during the break, and it'll be, I'll host all the information online on Blackboard, and then from there, it'll be due tonight. It'll be 2.5% of your final grade, okay, or 2%. Any questions around this, right? Because if I don't give you a little lab to do, you're not going to do it, right? That's what happens with this kind of stuff. So, and that's how important I think it is, because we're going to be using the same deployment process, as an example as we go forward. By the way, I'm also going to give you a chance on your lab if you don't want to use Azure, because let's say you don't like Microsoft, or you're using another provider, right? Let's say you're using DigitalOcean, Heroku, or your own provider, whatever it is. I want you to do the same steps with lesson 5 to prove to me that you can do it, to deploy somewhere with your website. All right. Now, you've already done it. You should have already done with assignment 2. But you know what? I want to push you to try and do it again, so you have more experience doing it, more chances to do the same thing. Some of you won't do it unless you have to do it. Okay, that's it for now. Let's take a short break, and when we get back, we'll get into the next piece.